What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily Podcast, powered by Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Continue with the season previews here. We're getting into what I believe and what I've been told is the absolute best position on the team, and that is the edge position, defensive end. Ton of experienced talent, tons of young talent, really 9-11 in the group. This is a super, super talented bunch of players. We will dive into the entire depth chart, top to bottom, as we break down this team getting ready for the season. First, I want to tell you about another team with a loaded depth chart. That is Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anijar and Levine. All right, Pete, we were at Media Day down there at the IPF, and a lot of optimism. I mean, look, it's always exciting. It's always the first day of camp. People are always juiced up, but I could sense it felt a little different in terms of the belief of the players and coaches.
Yeah, we've been doing that. Actually, this was your first one, D. So, you pop your cherry there. But I've been going to these for years, and it always seems like, I don't know if the word is like guarded, right? A lot of the coaches, really the coaches, because the players are always going to be themselves and talk, right? But the coaches, I think there was a real energy about them and understanding that, look, everything, they're not in year 1 or 2 anymore. But at the same time, this is not a staff that's like on the hot seat or anything, right? Everyone's excited about where this thing is going. And I think that goes a long way as well. Everything's going well on the recruiting trail, right? So all of this plays into the excitement for the season. And of course, they have a quarterback that everyone seems to believe in. But this group we're talking about today, the similar theme to some of these other positions we've talked about, you have guys that are returning. Rueben Bain, I don't know if he's a veteran at this point, but what you're going to get with him as an all-conference player, and I think an all-American level player as well this year. But you have some younger guys behind that, some transfers. So it's a nice mix, which I think is, in today's age of college football, what you need to make a run. Yeah,
we talked to some of these guys today. I saw Rueben Bain walking around there at the media day. One thing I want to say, though, just like an anecdote from the media day, is I was speaking to a veteran offensive player off the record, just kind of, talking. And I mentioned, feels different. He said, yeah, it really is. And he pointed across the room to Cam Ward and goes, this is the reason why everybody's confident. This guy right over here. And it wasn't like hype. It wasn't like trying to be funny. It was like dead serious. He goes, this guy's just different. So that to me is what I think is drawing all this confidence from these players, is when you have the quarterback that everybody believes in, it makes such a difference on the rest of the team. We've seen it countless times throughout every level of football. And I think the last time I seen this level of confidence in a quarterback was D'Eriq King back in 2020. Of course, we saw what happened there. And I think when you talk about passing ability, Cam Ward's just on a different planet.
Yep, 100% agreed. And again, it helps when you go to the other side of the ball and you have some guys who can get after the quarterback. And this group has a ton of that.
Yeah, so let's start with, I posed this question to some of my group chats, and I didn't get an answer that made me think twice about what I'm saying, which is I really believe that Miami has the 2 best players in the ACC, period. The 2 best players in the ACC are in orange and green. One of them is Cam Ward. The other one is number 4, formerly number 44, Rueben Bain. I mean, this guy, look, we can talk about, the power that he plays with, the work ethic, the bend. He really has, it's so unique because when he was coming up as a high school recruit, a lot of people doubted him because he was not that thoroughbred defensive end body. He's kind of stocky, what he was when he was a younger player. A lot of people questioned, is he an undersized D tackle? Like, what is he? You couldn't figure him out. Of course, he kept getting sacks. I think when you just isolate his skills and you say, does he have power? Unreal power, both from his strong hands and from his lower body, which is bigger than average for a defensive end, way bigger than average. When you talk about the bend and sort of the defensive end pass rush specific movements, he has all those. He's flexible despite his body type. And you talk about the motor. He's got a motor like none other. The work ethic to get better, he has that. The coordination to finish once he gets to the passer, he has that as well. So when you really break down all the attributes, he has him. Against the run, that power plays up too because he does have that big lower body and he's flexible, he can get low. So on the run, he's good too. And of course, the motor plays there as well. So he is somebody that's just born for this particular position. You wouldn't really put him at tight end and throw him the ball. He's not like, again, Jalen Phillips could have been a great tight end. He could have been a great linebacker. He played safety in high school. Bain is just built to do what he did last year, and that is toss offensive tackles out of the club and get to the passer.
And it's interesting, D, because look, everyone thinks about speed rushers and the issues that they give tackles, and look, you need help sometimes as a tackle with these speed rushers, but you can fan those guys, outside a little bit and do some stuff up front, with the line with those guys. With Rueben Bain, you're going to need multiple guys sometimes on him, right? Because he will just with that power club move that he uses, right? He, like you said, he goes right through you. So the style, it's kind of a throwback style in a sense, D, because these DNs, he's there just trying to run around you half the time. But I think when we talk about the physical run game for Miami that we expect and how that can wear down the opposing defense, I think Rueben Bain and some of these other guys, but Bain as the tone setter, they're going to be able to wear down opposing offensive lines.
No question about it. And you look at what Bain did historically as a true freshman. This, to me, PFF is up and down. Sometimes it matches what you see. Sometimes it doesn't, makes you think, and sometimes you say, yeah, that's just off. In this case, I think it all comes together, which is most quarterback pressures by a freshman. That's something that's pretty easy to grade. So there's not a lot of subjectivity to it. Single season in the PFF era, Power 5 only. Look at these names. Myles Garrett, number 1. Will Anderson, number 2. First pick of the draft, second pick of the draft, 2 of the best in the NFL. Arden Key, number 3, was a very good young player. Kind of had some inconsistencies, ups and downs, but now is developing. He signed a contract with Tennessee Titans, had 6 sacks last year, 20 sacks in the NFL. So another talented guy. Dexter Lawrence, Clemson, first-round pick, one of the best players in the NFL. Derek Barnett, 2014, another first-round pick, a guy that had a long career with the Philadelphia Eagles and has been a good NFL player. 45, pressures, Rueben Bain, and he's actually tied with another name we know, Gregory Rousseau, first-round pick, starter for the Bills. So basically, that's the company that he's keeping on this list. So just an unbelievable talent and somebody who I think is going to continue to get better. We've talked to him in the offseason about his work ethic. He sat down with us after the spring game. You can see the intelligence that he brings to the table and the want to. So as his body develops, it's going to be interesting. Does he slim down and try to be faster and more of a true D end? Guidry thinks he's eventually going to be a D tackle. I think for now he's trying to slim down and be more athletic. So we'll see where it goes, but you could pencil him in my opinion, as a dominant player, as good as any defensive end in the country, and the best defensive player, in my opinion, in the ACC.
Next guy on the list here, Tyler Barron, someone who obviously coming over from, he played at Tennessee last year, then was at Louisville, and now, of course, at Miami. And I think if you're talking about NFL upside, D, on this defensive line, there's some other guys, some of the young guys we'll talk about also. But if the health is not a question here in terms of the shoulder, right, you're talking about a guy who has top 100, top 50 type NFL talent, right? So, I mean, to me, he's kind of like Sam Brown on the other side of the ball, someone who can really elevate. Very happy about what they have a wide receiver already. The defensive end room, edge room was already in a really good place. But you add a Tyler Barron there, and you're going from a really good, great room to like potentially an elite room if he can play to his ability.
And I'll take you further. I'd say first round talent. Now he's bounced around different schools, so I think there's some stuff there.
I know how it works, that with his injury background that might come into play, but pure talent, I'm with you for first round type ability.
And the opposite of what we just said with Rueben Bain. So Rueben Bain, you look at him and you don't say this guy's an elite pass rusher. Tyler Barron is exactly what an elite pass rusher should look like physically. 6'5", 260, lean. Really just, again, exactly how you draw it up. Similar to Jalen Phillips in that mold. I think one thing with Tyler Barron, you look at the stats, 27 tackles for loss in his career, 13 and a half sacks, a lot of pressures. But when you really drill down on the tape, he was lining up right in front of offensive tackles at times. He was lining up inside. Very rarely was he out wide just to let it rip. Right. And I think talking to Miami coaches, one of the things they tell you is if this guy is able to get outside and do what he does as a pure rusher, he's going to be a whole new level of player than what you saw at Tennessee. And he was very good at Tennessee. So there's still meat on the bone, I think, with Tyler Barron as a pass rusher. It's one of the reasons he came to Miami. Of course, Rueben Bain, on the other side, needing a double team, is going to allow Tyler Barron to have even more success. And I think back to the game we watched against Virginia, which Tennessee against Virginia. I remember watching that game. Barron completely dominated. He was the SEC Defensive Player of the Week that week. And I remember watching that thinking, well, the competition's not that good, so that's why he's so dominant. Then you snap out of it and you realize he's not playing Alabama, and LSU every week. He's playing the Virginias of the world now. He's in the ACC. So the fact that he looks so out of place in that game, and if you pull up that game on YouTube, if you guys want to see what I'm talking about, the fact that he looks so out of place in that game really made me think that this guy in the ACC could be a true monster.
Agreed completely. And look, if he puts it all together at that position, and again, I mentioned the medical stuff. It's not that I have, great info on that or anything right now. We just understand that was the question mark with him. But if all that stuff's cleared up, and he has a big year for Miami, then he can definitely be an early round draft pick next April.
And let me talk about that real quick. Just, there was a labrum issue at Louisville when he came in there from Tennessee. Miami was well aware when he came on his visit that he had that issue. They checked it out. They felt comfortable with it. He's a Cane. And, as you can infer, there's a substantial investment in a player like that. So Miami knew about it. They're confident what they're going to get. I think with Barron, some of the issues that maybe if he was coming into the program for 4 years, just in terms of the bouncing around and the medical stuff, yeah, I can see that. But for what he's being tasked to do, which is come in for one season on a talented defensive line, cause havoc, make a nice highlight reel and bounce, I think he's more, I'd be more than comfortable that he can do that and do that at the highest level.
I mean, look, we'll see it now during NFL camp, but how many of these veteran pass rushers don't find their home until the end because, they're looking for the right spot, whatever, but they're being brought in wherever they sign in the NFL to do one thing, and that's get after the quarterback. You're not really asking him to do much else. I think it's a similar situation here with Barron.
Yep, no question about that. And who would have thought that we'd be talking about defensive ends and it'd be two names before we got to Akeem Mesidor, who was Miami's best defensive player in 2022, of course, along with Cam Kitchens. 26 tackles for loss in his career, 17 and a half sacks, played all over. He was a linebacker in high school, Canadian who went to Clearwater School for International Players, linebacker, ends up going to West Virginia, gets moved inside as an underside defensive tackle, is their best player as a true sophomore and a freshman as defensive tackle, basically. Goes outside for the Canes, has a great season there, deals with a foot injury all of last year, barely plays. Now is coming back to play defensive end, can also play inside. Similar to Rueben Bain, I think just less. So the same things that make Rueben Bain good, the power, the stout kind of frame, which helps him against the run and the pass, the active hands, the ability to continue to work, the ability to get, kind of Gumby, for lack of a better words, the flexibility and movement that's sort of unique to the pass rush, the bend, the ability to sort of string movements together to close the distance to the quarterback. He has all that stuff. He's not a 4.4 guy, but he can run. He has some versatility, again, a former linebacker, and then the motor and IQ. This is just somebody who really, he's not a bull in a china shop. He sees the game, he sees the ball, and he finds the ball. That's how I would describe Akeem Mesidor's game.
And I feel like he's obviously with the foot injury, he's a forgotten man, D. But before last season, before the injury, I was getting from the NFL potential 3rd, 4th round pick here. And look, he's not going to be a fit for everyone because he's a versatile guy, right? But like there's certain schemes where he is very, very valuable to be moved around that defensive line at the next level. If he gets back healthy, again, we said the same thing with Barron here, but like, I know you're the same way. If you don't have the NFL talent, it's going to be hard to win big at this level, obviously at the college over here and make a deep run. But Mesidor is a guy who we're talking about him as a defensive end, and he's obviously going to play that, but expect to see him, slide inside there on 3rd down as well.
Yeah, and we'll talk about some of that in a second because another guy that played inside, probably more than people think, played inside at Marshall was Elijah Alston, 6'3", 250. We met him when we did the post-game interviews for the spring game, and I was surprised. First of all, great kid, total class act, mature guy. But I was shocked at how big this dude was. Because he is kind of the designated pass rusher of the group, I expected much more of a linebacker frame. but this guy was big. He wasn't like huge, like a D tackle, but he was a good sized defensive end with length and just natural size. He wasn't overly puffed up. I don't know, Pete, you saw him up close. I don't know if you had the same impression of him.
Yeah. And it's funny because I'm actually showing the video here of that pick 6 he had last year where he took it like 80 yards. And like, you see it, he's big, but he doesn't have too much excess weight on him. Right. So, to me, he's a speed to power guy, probably first, but he does have that ability to take on, blocks and show some power as well. It's funny, the clip you see here, again, for those watching it on YouTube, Chavis Jackson is the first guy to go over to him there once he gets back to the sideline. So that it's funny that both of them are at Miami now. But I think, again, I'm going to say it again, NFL type of athlete here, maybe a later round projection at this point, but he should do well based on what we've been told and what we've heard in the testing side of things. The explosiveness is definitely there.
Yeah, I saw him in spring. He missed the second half of spring just with some minor injuries, but he was very, very good. When he did play, was going against top offensive linemen, your Jalen Rivers of the world, and holding himself, doing more than good enough against guys like that. This is somebody with 45 tackles, 6 sacks, 2 forced fumbles last year, and of course the INT to the crib, which Peter just showed you. Pro Football Focus, I keep coming back to it because I'm not a huge believer with certain positions, but like defensive back, it's kind of hard to grade. You don't know what everybody's responsibilities are. Pass rush is something that you can see what a hurry looks like. You could see what a pressure looks like. You can see what beating the offensive tackle looks like. I mean, it's one-on-one. You know where they're trying to go. It's easier to grade, in my opinion. Elijah Alston had a Pro Football Focus grade of 91.2 and a pass rush grade of 90.9. Those are elite numbers, probably the best number. I mean, I know the best number of anybody in the transfer portal. So combine that with Rueben Bain, Akeem Mesidor, Tyler Barron. And here's a scenario that has to excite you if you are a Miami Hurricane fan. Rueben Bain is a guy Lance Guidry thinks will eventually be a defensive tackle in the NFL. Akeem Mesidor has played a ton of defensive tackle. Barron and Elijah Alston, very comfortable on the edges, but also played defensive tackle and pass rush situations. So you put all 4 of these elite pass rushers at the ACC level on the field at once. You don't know who's going where, who's coming from where, who's lining up where. All of them can do it. All of them can destroy one-on-one matchups and cause significant problems. And oh, by the way, if you do bring a 5th guy, here's Francisco Mauanoa with 8.5 sacks coming behind it. So this is a chance to be one of the most fearsome pass rushing combinations that we've seen at Miami since I can't even remember. This is what we hope to see with Quincy Roche, Greg Rousseau, and Jalen Phillips. We lost that when Rousseau opted out. This is the chance to see these multiple elite pass rushers on the field at one time.
Yeah, and I think with Alston too, it's like he's probably not going to be seeing a lot of double teams. He's probably going to be, the forgotten man. Yeah, I don't know if that's the right thing or not if you're an opposing offense, but like most of the attention is probably going to be on some of these other guys. That may change a few games in, but I think he has a chance to rack up some good sack numbers here and really clean things up on the back end.
Yeah, again, this is the best position group on the team. And I'm just talking about the veterans, the 4 guys we listed. We haven't even got into the sophomore and freshmen in this crew who are blue chip players who have people really, really, really excited for the future. But just, again, in terms of the guys that are peaking right now and have proven production, I don't think there's a better foursome of defensive ends in the nation. I don't care where you point me, where in the SEC you're looking. Rueben Bain's as good as anybody. Tyler Barron is a complete stud. Mesidor, at his age and experience, is unbelievable. And Elijah Alston, you see the PFF grade and some of the stuff he's done in his highlights. So I really, really like this group. I think it's a special group. I think this is going to be a difference-making group for Miami because, look, with this offense scoring points, think of the Indianapolis Colts. And in fact, someone used this analogy with me when I was talking about this team with someone inside the program. Indianapolis Colts with Peyton Manning. They scored a lot of points. They got a lot of leads. They played from ahead most of the time. When you're playing from ahead with a great offense, what does the other team have to do? Pass the ball. And if you have to pass the ball against Rueben Bain, Tyler Barron, Akeem Mesidor, Elijah Alston, potentially all at the same time, you got some problems, especially when they know you're passing. So very, very excited to see this combination of a great quarterback and great pass rushers. There's a reason that those 2 positions go number 1 in the draft so often.
Yeah, and talking about some of these young guys, we'll start with Malik Bryant, who had a really strong spring, switching positions from inside linebacker to, I guess they call it the jack position. And D, I know you were raving about him this spring.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk to him in media day. Very mature personality. You could tell he's locked in. He's in the 230 range. Very, very comfortable at that stand-up linebacker position, that edge, jack linebacker, the rusher. It was, he tried to make it work at linebacker, reading and reacting, but that's not what he's been his whole career. He really is a guy that likes to rush the passer. Of course, he can drop back. He can play the run and make tackles in space. He could do linebacker things, but rushing the passer as his kind of first option really fits what he's always been good at. He's got a great motor. He's got great quickness. Has a knack. He's one of those guys that just finds his way to the football. That's why he was such a highly rated player out of IMG and then later Orlando Jones. So this is a guy that is, if you talk about young guys, the next guy up, he is the fifth guy. I don't think people expected him to, or I don't say people didn't expect him to be that guy, but there were questions. He was not locked into the spot where he was the next man up behind these veterans, but he did so well in spring that he announced his presence and said, yeah, this is why I was rated where I was rated as a high school player. This is my natural spot. This is what I can do. This is how I can impact the game. So he's moved up on the charts and has really, to me, solidified his spot as the next man up behind these four veterans.
Next up here, Marquise Lightfoot, and very explosive edge out of the Chicago area. Big pickup in this last recruiting class. One of the highest rated guys at his position. And look, a guy who, like all these young guys, needs to put some good weight on, but as a rotational guy in passing situations, he looks like he could provide something early.
Yeah, he's 5-star for a reason, right? Dominated the Army All-America game, was by far the best rusher in that game, really took over the game at times. 220 range. He's not going to be a very bulky guy at this stage of his career. He's a young pass rusher like a lot of the guys we're going to go through here. But the speed, the burst, which we saw in the Army game, which we've seen here on Green Tree, and what I think separates Lightfoot from a lot of pass rushers of this mold, sort of the super athletic, lighter defensive ends coming out of high school. Number one, he plays with surprising power. He's not the most fluid and athletic guy. He's very quick and fast and explosive. It's not like he is, a wide receiver, a tight end playing defensive end. He's pretty much straight ahead going at you. But what he does is he has power that is greater than his size would indicate. And his motor and toughness is very, very high level for a 5-star edge rusher. This is a guy who played special teams in high school, covered kicks. How often do you see guys of this pedigree at this position covering kicks in high school, especially in their highlight reel? You just don't see it. He was doing that kind of thing. So this is somebody I think skill-wise, he's a 5-star. That's why he was in the Army All-America game dominating like he was, just because of the burst and the length. But he has the mentality of a lower tough, being aggressive. Spring, watch that. It's just something that he did. I saw him do repeatedly throughout spring. He is able to impact the game, run plays down from behind, kind of get in the pile and give it a little extra push. And then, of course, occasionally break free and win his one-on-one matchup, get pressures. But it's not just the finesse and the pass rush. This guy's got more to him to impact the game. That's why he made such a big impression in the spring game. He did it all spring. And he was one of the podium guys, they'll call it, in the spring game, given to the press. He spoke to the press after the game. True freshman, very, very rare, but that's what he brought to the table. And by the way, he can also cover the flats. I've seen him dropping hooks, dropping zones, and he's surprisingly comfortable doing that, probably because he's so fast that he can cover a lot of ground.
You mentioned motor and toughness with Marquise Lightfoot. This next guy here, we've been very excited about him before he was, look, he's still not getting hyped up, but Cole McConathy, coming out of Alabama there. And he is a guy who came in, he has the motor, he has the toughness, he's long, he's strong, and he's already put in, a nice shift there in spring and then also put on some good weight. So what are your expectations for Cole McConathy moving forward?
Love this player. Another guy from Mobile, Alabama. Cam Pruitt, Bobby Pruitt. We've talked about him a ton. Just love what he does. He looks like an NFL player to me. We'll talk about him on the linebacker show. Cole McConathy, if Cam Pruitt's not my favorite player on the defense, the young guys, it might be Cole McConathy. Armando Blunt's another one we talked about yesterday. But this guy, McConathy, He's got the size, which you talked about. He is a thicker player, so he's not as skinny as some of the pure pass rushers that we're going to be talking about on this show. Your Pickett's, your Elias Rudolphs, your Marquise Lightfoots. This guy's a bigger guy. He's ready in that 240 range. He'll be 250 pretty quick if he's not there already. But I think it's interesting because you compare him to Lightfoot, which is why they complement each other so well. He does not have Lightfoot's speed. He does not have Lightfoot's explosiveness. He's not slow, and he has some of it, but it's not the same, just eye-popping 5-star twitch that Lightfoot has. But he's actually, to me, a little more fluid in terms of putting his moves together, just the coordination of his body. I think that's where he kind of excels athletically, along with his size, 6'5", 240, which is where he's seems to be at now. And then his use of hands. This is a second-generation player. His long arm move is absolutely outstanding. I can't tell you how many times this spring he was going against a veteran offensive tackle with more experience than him, guys that we're counting on to play and play well, really talented offensive tackles. And he would just long arm him right to the quarterback, get him off balance, use his hands, just keep it. He's just a bear to block. He, of course, had his hustle sacks, his coverage sacks. He plays with a great motor, but he could beat guys too. Not with that first step twitch necessarily, but with the ability to get into the body of the offensive tackle and get him off balance.
Yeah, I think his upside is through the roof. And one of these guys that we saw some people leave during spring, and I think that there's a reason why the coaches were, pretty excited about this young group here.
Yeah, McConathy, he started the spring game. I talked about how Marquise Lightfoot made such an impression that he spoke to the media after it. McConathy started that game, just to give you an idea of what he could do. I think, I'm not saying it's a 1-for-1 causation, but I don't think, Jaden Wayne, the former highly rated player out of Washington, going back to the state of Washington, I think there is some link between what happened there and what Cole McConathy did, because Cole McConathy does have that kind of size. This guy was just, I'm looking at some of his stats. 22 sacks as a junior, 16 sacks as a senior, also had a ton of sacks as a sophomore. He's like a Rueben Bain when it comes to production, just in the state of Alabama. Different player. He has his own style, but with the size, with the technique, with the motor, all those things together, going to get this guy a lot of sacks. And, I joke about it in the group chats, but it's true, man. I mean, people say this guy's a fish out of water here in Miami, but look at what Miami's been good. They've had a mix on the defensive line. They've had some white guys, man. They've had some crazy white guys on the D line pretty much every time that they've won a championship. So McConathy's right at home, even though he's coming from Mobile, Alabama. Excited to see what he does. Maybe it's just superstition, but I don't know. I believe in superstition with some of that stuff. That's why you got to have a Columbus guy on the O-line and, one of these crazy white guys on the O-line, on the D-line. So we'll see how it goes.
So Elias Rudolph is a guy, as we'll talk about here now, that you had a chance to talk to today at Media Day. I know you came away impressed with him, D, and you talk about twitch and burst. You're getting all of that and more with Elias Rudolph.
Yeah, I was blown away talking to Elias Rudolph. First of all, just seeing him, the guy just looks like an athlete. I mean, he told me he ran track. I think there was a picture that went around Miami media of him wearing his track outfit running the 4x1. He told me that he peaked at 11 flat in the 100 meters, and he wasn't really training that much. He had to leave to come to Miami. Super grateful to be at Miami. Awesome kid. You just see how happy he was to have made it here. He had to get through some adversity, had a shoulder injury, had stuff he had to get through to get here. So just, again, really enjoyed interviewing him, and the speed, the motor with him as well. He's someone that doesn't get talked about a lot. I think some people weren't sure if he was going to make it here. He did, chose Miami over Michigan, decommitted from Michigan. And he, talking to people who have just seen him work out since he's been here, he didn't go through spring. They think this guy's got a chance to be really, really special. He is in the mold of the Lightfoots and the Booker Pickett's, who we'll talk about in a second, as far as long, super athletic, pure pass rushing kind of guys. And he's going to have a chance to be as good as any of them because the speed, the length is all there. He said he's gained about 20 pounds since he's gotten here. I think he came out about 205. He's already up to 225 in that range, 220. So the sky's the limit for him. Now he's in a strength and conditioning program. We'll see where he ends up, but I'm really excited to see what he does. Yeah,
the huddle tape as I've been playing here, the get off is really, he's special in terms of the get off and the explosiveness. It just really pops. So once a guy like him can start to piece together some of these pass rush moves and continue to put that good weight on, I sound like a broken record saying it, but that's really what that's half the battle with these young defensive linemen. D is making sure their bodies progress the way they need to. But I think, like you said, he's similar to Lightfoot in that sense. And I think, look, we see the depth, so it's hard to say, well, this guy's going to get X amount of snaps this season. But if he continues to progress and sticks with it, I think next year he's a guy who is a legit impact guy for Miami. Yeah,
really excited to see him. And he's got a competitor who's built the same way, got the same kind of speed, same kind of production in high school. That's a guy you talked to, Pete, when you were at Media Day, which is Booker Pickett from the Tampa area. Super productive guy, went to Under Armour game, dominated there just like Lightfoot dominated the Army All-America game. 2 sacks in that game, went to the Polynesian Bowl, had 2 sacks in that game. Bigger than people expected, more wiry, strong than people expected, and of course, a great athlete.
Yeah, and I talked about that Under Armour game with him, and the interview will be coming out here in the next few days. But really with him, I got the sense that he's kind of chomping at the bit to get a chance to really, you're not an early enrollee, you're on here in the spring, and you want to get out there with these freshmen. You see the tweets, you see the reports of the Elijah Loftons of the world doing things. You see Lightfoot the spring game that he had. So as a fellow freshman, you could tell he was just ready to get out there and show what he's got. So excited about him. I mean, that was about as good of a performance in one of those all-star games, I think, that I've ever seen from a defensive player.
Yeah. If I hadn't just seen it from Marquise Lightfoot, right? So yeah. It's like both the guys that really stood out in the all-star games came to Miami, and that's what you want to see. You don't want to be making excuses for guys. Hey, but this guy didn't play enough. Maybe he was a little hurt. You want guys to dominate when you watch them, and that's what both of those guys did. And both rave reviews. Again, all 3 of these guys, Pickett, Lightfoot, and Rudolph, I hear the same thing. Long, run like deer, great motors. Really excited to see these kids, and then just talking to them again. Great personalities on all these guys, and really looking forward to seeing what they do. And it's the right kind of layering, because you're talking about the veterans who are impact players, and then the young guys who could be impact players. And you don't have to force one into the other, where you have maybe talented freshmen, pretty weak upperclassmen, or vice versa. You have a layer of guys that can dominate right now, and then hopefully the younger generation that can learn from those guys and then play when they're ready and dominate at that point. So that's kind of what you want it to look like. And this position, again, to me, the best position on the entire football team, defensive end, is the most balanced when you talk about veterans and young players.
Yeah, and I think the red shirt rule that they can play the 4 games now is really helpful for some of the guys in this group, right? Because again, it's a position that some of them may not be physically ready to just take on a full season, it's 15 games to 17 game season now potentially. So you might need some of them by the end of the year, the way that guys go down at D-line. But it's a really good opportunity for them to get their feet wet, start to get some of that experience. But then at the same time, you're also not relying on them. But I have a feeling that 1 or 2 of those guys, in this group of freshmen D, is just like too good to keep off the field, right? We're talking about all these vets and expect them to be great. But every year there emerges some of these young guys that they just are too good to keep off the field. And I think 1 or 2 of these guys will be in that category.
Yeah, and you want to get some clothes that are going to be too good to keep in your closet, go to caneswear.com and Caneswear in Davie. Get ready for the season. Get ready for the Gator game. Gear up. It is time. No, don't want to be doing it last minute. Shop. Take a look at what you like. You have tons of options. If you want Miami Heat, Miami Dolphins, Panthers gear, Inter Miami, they got all that too. But if you're a Miami Hurricane fan, which of course, why else you're listening, caneswear.com. They got absolutely everything that you need as a Canes fan, the spot where Miami fans shop. So, P, we've been breezing through these. This, to me, again, this was an easy one to do because the position is so stacked. We didn't even talk about the guys that left, your Nigel Lee Kelly's, Jaden Wayne. I mean, those guys have a chance to be very good players, but what you have in this room makes you understand why guys might move on.
Yeah, and look, a position that it looks like they're going to continue to keep restocking, and obviously Miami's had a great history in the NFL with guys, but Jason Taylor being there as well has been a nice thing. We'll see how long he's here for. We've talked about it before. It's hard to keep a guy like that on staff for multiple years, but now he's going on year 3 on staff now. So I mean, look, to me, it's a win-win for any of these young guys who want to come play for him. But excited about this group. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you're just checking out this one right here. We've done all of the other positions. Still have to get to linebacker as well as defensive back. We'll probably break up the corners and the safeties into 2 separate days as well. But we're going to keep it coming, man. And we have a lot of extra content coming. We have the daily show that we're going to continue to do. But, I mean, we did maybe 15 to 20 interviews today at Media Day. And most of them, D, were one-on-one. So hopefully, you're going to be seeing a lot of stuff coming out from other websites and things of that nature on Media Day. But we will have our own spin on it over the next couple weeks here. You'll be seeing all that content dropping. So stay tuned.
And look, August 7th, big announcement coming to Canes Insight. Stay tuned. August 7th. Got a big thing coming. You guys are going to be jacked up about it. So circle that 8-7 on your calendar, that Reggie Wayne 8-7. Big news coming at Canes Insight.
Go Canes.
Go Canes.
Yeah, this an insight to the Canes, and you know we ain't playing no games. Joaquin said dominate, so that's what we do. Home of the legends and 7th floor crew, down in Miami where hurricanes brew. You here for the rumors, we bring you the news, cause it's all about the you, and nobody do it like Canes Insight. 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 It's Canes Insight.